This morning, a major disaster unfolding in southern Ukraine. Drone video showing the Dnipro River gushing through a critical dam and hydroelectric power plant. This video shot from the banks showing huge chunks of the Kakhovka dam destroyed. Ukraine blames Russia for blowing up the strategic dam overnight, which is under Russian control in the Kherson region. President Zelenskyy calling it a terrorist attack, while Russian state media accuses Ukraine of attacking the dam without providing any evidence. The reservoir, roughly the same size as Utah's Great Salt Lake, is in effect the front line. Ukrainian civilians on the West Bank and Russian troops on the east. It's one of 6 dams on the Dnipro River and supplies vital drinking water, power, and cooling for the nearby Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The IAEA confirms the power plant has adequate supplies of water in the cooling pools, at least for now.
They have very good level of water, which will help for at minimum 1 month to operate a cooling system.
Energy analyst Alexander Harchenko estimates by tonight some 300,000 civilians will be without clean drinking water and says some 500,000 will be affected by loss of power and flooding. Ukraine's hydropower company said an explosion inside the engine room of the plant caused the destruction. The station cannot be restored.
All right, so the NBC reporter says that Russia is blaming Ukraine and Ukraine is blaming Russia, and that Russia doesn't have evidence. No mention at all about Ukraine's evidence. What do you think happened, Scott? By the way, I've been advised to tell everybody the date and the time. People are listening on Spotify and so forth, and they don't know. It's June 6th, 2023 at 3 p.m. Eastern time.
Oof. Well, I've been consulting with my head of security about what could have gone wrong at the dam, and Maverick has said he hasn't a clue. So I'm going to take him out of the picture. And
okay,
look, let's be straight up. Who benefits from this? Russia doesn't benefit from this in any way, shape, or form. I mean, that's one of the key aspects in judging anything. We've talked about this back in Nord Stream 2, cui bono. You know, who's to benefit? Well, Russia didn't benefit, so why would Russia blow it up? Ukraine benefits from this in every way, shape, and form. First of all, by flooding the lower portion of the Dnipro River, Ukraine is sweeping away Russian fortifications. The vast majority of the flooding that's taking place right now is on what they would call the, let me get this right, the left bank of the river. And because we have to go the direction the river flows, and the river is flowing into the Black Sea. So the left bank is the Russian bank, and all the minefields, all of the entrenchments, all the fortification that Russia has built up there are swamped. They're gone. Not only that, but Russia had built in the upper Dnipro River as part of their defensive barrier because of all the water that was in the reservoir, and made it virtually impassable. By draining the reservoir, you've made the prospects of breaching this river far more possible for the Ukrainians from a counteroffensive standpoint. This also creates a nightmare for the Russians in Crimea. It's going to significantly reduce the flow of water into the canal system that feeds Crimea, and it's just going to create problems there. And it's an environmental disaster. I mean, literally, what's going to happen in the Black Sea, we don't know yet. But to surge this much water in an uncontrolled fashion through urban areas, sweeping up pollutants, chemicals, etc., and then dumping this in the Black Sea, it's going to be an ecological nightmare. There's going to be ramifications for years to come, maybe decades to come. And Russia is a Black Sea nation that cares deeply about these things. Then you also have to just weigh in the fact that, to accept that Russia has attacked this dam, you'd have to believe that Russia is in the business of shooting itself in the foot. Now, that is the Western narrative. We've been hearing it. Russia blew up Nord Stream. Russia blew up the Crimea Bridge. Russia has blown everything up. Russia has attacked itself with drones. Russia does everything against itself. So why not blow up this dam? Well, Russia didn't do it. What we do know is that the Ukrainians have practiced doing this. They have a general who has bragged about, we understand there's military value to blowing up this dam, and they actually did a rehearsal where they fired HIMARS missiles against the dam to judge the accuracy and the potential of committing the sufficient damage. And he said, yeah, we can take this dam out anytime we want. Well, they just took it out. Ukraine did this, and they did this because they're trying to generate a new crisis that the West is full of Ukraine fatigue right now. They've just pumped Ukraine up with tens of billions of dollars worth of military equipment to carry out a counteroffensive that everybody knows will fail. I hope people understand that. There's just not a snowball's chance in hell that this counteroffensive is going to have any meaningful success. So it's going to fail. The 12 brigades that NATO has built up over the course of the last 6 to 8 months, they will be destroyed, and there's nothing to replace them, nothing whatsoever. And come the NATO summit in Vilnius, which is coming up, you're going to see Ukraine fatigue. People are going to ask the question, how can we go on? What more can we do? Especially with Ukraine that's incapable of winning this war. So Ukraine is trying to repeat what they did back in April of 2022, when the pressure was being put on Ukraine to sit down with Russia in Istanbul on 1 April and sign a peace treaty. They manufactured the Bucha massacre. I know I got banned from Twitter. My God, it's horrible for daring to say that Ukraine did it. But Ukraine did it, and the whole world knows Ukraine did it. It was a manufactured case, not even close. And the purpose was to create outrage to keep Ukraine from making peace. Now we have a situation where Ukraine is defeated, unable to win, no hope of victory. The world is going to get tired. So Ukraine is creating yet another outrage. Look at these evil Russians. And what has Ukraine done? They want to go to the Security Council to impose even more sanctions. Well, I just came back from Russia, and I'm telling you this. From the Russian perspective, please sanction them more, because the more the West sanctions them, the better their economy becomes. This just shows the absolute vacuum that exists between the earlobes of everybody who supports Ukraine. It is a terrorist regime, literally a terrorist regime. There's no redeeming qualities to any aspect of the Ukrainian regime, and it must be terminated with extreme prejudice. If you believe in peace, understand this: there will be no peace so long as Ukraine continues to believe there's the possibility of survival and victory. The shortest path to peace is a decisive Russian victory. And, Ukraine believes that by blowing up this dam, it will be able to prolong this conflict. We'll see what Russia does.
The next question comes from George Taylor, Rocky Mountains. Much talk in the Western press on the success of the Patriot missile system, but I also hear it takes many Patriot missiles to knock down a single Kinzhal missile. Can you share any insight? Does it cost more to intercept the Kinzhal than it costs the Russians to make them?
Well, with all due respect, George, what information are you reading? I don't think a single Kinzhal has been shot down by a Patriot. In fact, there's the distinct possibility that the Kinzhals have taken all 3 Patriot batteries provided to Ukraine out of action. It doesn't mean they destroyed everything about it, but the indication is that significant components of all 3 Patriot batteries have been destroyed by the Kinzhal missile. Why? Because a Patriot can't shoot it down. Now, that doesn't mean that if the Kinzhal fired in a vacuum all by itself in an isolated fashion, that the Patriot couldn't eventually get a targeting solution and shoot it down. But, the Russians know how to fight a war. So what you do is you confuse, you overwhelm the Patriot system, which operates, by the way, in automatic mode. Because the Ukrainian people operating it just don't know the system well enough to manually take over and work through distractions, work through things that the Russians are doing to confuse the system. A good Patriot operator would come in, go on manual mode, and disregard this, disregard that, disregard this, and hopefully get a firing solution eventually. Because the human brain is the greatest resource people have ever had, but it has to be a trained brain, an experienced brain. The Ukrainians aren't that, so they go on automatic, and what you see is that the Russians have figured this out. And so what you'll see is the Patriot engages, and it begins to fire off missiles in a standard response. They're not achieving the outcome desired, and as the system comes closer and closer, the missile goes into panic mode until eventually it's just firing everything it off in a desperate attempt to survive, and then bam, gone. Sorry, cat. I just scared the cat. But so the Patriot isn't a good weapons system. It's not. It's a system that was designed back in the day of the Safeguard. A lot of the Safeguards in the 1960s, early 1970s anti-ballistic missile system. Safeguard had automation built into it, and so the Patriot has assumed a lot of this automation, but it's never been a good system. It couldn't shoot down a Scud during the Gulf War. I personally attest to that. It killed more Allied airplanes than Iraqi missiles during the 2003 invasion, and then it didn't protect the Saudi oil fields very well from Houthi drones and missiles. So the idea that the Patriot is some sort of magic system that can shoot down a Kinzhal is absurd. The Kinzhal right now, I think the score is 3-0 in favor of Kinzhal.